Okay, we're gonna have to make do with this audio for now. I don't have my regular mic, but I'm trying to put together a little bit of a tutorial slash show and tell to show you something that I've been working on. I'm not releasing this broadly right now. I just kind of want to keep it within the admin group, so I can do some basic testing. But this is a few new tools that kind of approach the editing process a little differently than we were doing before. Um, so there's a little bit to show here and some practical kind of implementation that I need to kind of just test a little bit with the admins in particular. And once I get a little bit more feedback, then I might have a better sense for whether this is ready to be released. Um, I'm hosting this on Google Sites so that I can have a little bit more control over the themes and the spacing and things of that nature. That'll become a little bit more apparent here in just a minute. When you go to this address, and I will give you the URL in the main chat, but when you go to this address, you'll see that there are three pages added in the upper right. These go in order, so you start with the JSON maker, you go to the data viewer and make all your edits, and then you complete by using the JSON outer. I'm not very good at naming things. I'm not that worried about it, but you should know that these are three different tools. Splitting it up has some advantages, especially for testing and bug fixing that I didn't really implement when I was working with the original Squad Maker tool. So this is something that I'm trying to do is basically break these into smaller modules so that it's clearer exactly what's breaking if there are issues with bugs at some point in the future, and also that we've got some sort of separation from, like, if we know, for instance, that the outer tool is working correctly, we don't touch it. There's no reason for us to mess with it. But if we're having issues with the way that JSONs are getting made or the data viewer is working, then we could just work on those and we still know that the JSON maker and the JSON outer are working. So, one of the ways in which this is going to be a little bit of a different implementation is I'm going to try to have more separated tools. That's one thing that we're doing a little differently. Okay, so let's talk about the JSON maker in particular. So when you go into the JSON maker, this probably looks a little bit like the old Squad Maker was looking, but under the hood, it's working quite differently. So what it's doing is when it first loads, and you'll notice that there's a little delay to that button highlighting there. This takes a minute to load. When it's first loading, it's actually going online and retrieving a bunch of text files that correspond to all of these different tables. So that's one change from the original Squad Maker 23. Prior to this, you had to upload these files in order to create the underlying data. Now that happens automatically. It just goes and gets the default data online. I'm pretty sure my tables are correct, but that's one of the things we need to test is that I've actually got the correct tables in there. But anyway, when it's taking a second to load, it's actually going online, grabbing all those tables from another web address, and loading them into the database. However, if you then go into choose file and pick a different um, sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time apparently. If you then go and find a different table, then you could hypothetically upload it instead, and this will take priority. So it'll use whatever gets uploaded, and if nothing is uploaded, then it will use the default. Um, so if you just want to start with a blank database that's just like it comes when it starts with when the game first comes out, then you'll just leave it alone and basically hit the output sm JSON file button here. If, for instance, you wanted to start from the IEM23 database, then you need to upload all of these files. If you only wanted to work with the squad file, the players.txt version that's in the squad files, just leave this unchecked. If you want to use the one that comes in FIFA editor, the Fifer tool, then you'll check this and then upload it. So anyway, brief recap. These are loaded by default. They'll be the base files at release. But if you want to if you want to create a file to work from that is specific to a mod already created or something like that, then you need to upload the exact tables that you want to use and then create this SMJSON file from there. So I'm going to go ahead and output this. And that leads to a file being downloaded. Let's talk about what JSON is and the point of this whole exercise that we just engaged in. So if we open this up in a regular old notepad, by the way, if you use some other program like Programmer's Notepad or something like that, it'll probably load really slow because these are big files. So if open in a notepad because it's really lightweight, you see all this data um, just get kind of crammed into a very specific format. So JSON format is a tag-based system for displaying complex data in a way that many programs and programming languages know how to read. So this basically is a way for us to create all those tables that are right now separated and things are super complicated. This gives us one unified way to share a database um, that is a shared language, a shared format for all of us. We can take these SMJSON files and turn them into tables that get uploaded into RDBM. We can take these JSON files and we can look at them in another programming language, like in JavaScript, so that I can mess with them in some of the other tools. You can also do a thing. So there's this app online called a JSON Viewer. Because JSON's so widely used, this JSON viewer is really, really popular. So you could take the JSON viewer and I'm highlighting all the data, and there's a ton of data in there. It's like 16 megs, so it'll take it a second. Oh my God. Wow, that's really going to take a second. All right, well, we're going to let that think for a second, and we'll come back to it. Um, I'll show you how this JSON maker works in a minute. You know what? I have a better idea. We're gonna close this. Don't worry about it. We're gonna try opening Notepad this way. And I'm gonna try to load from there. And actually, I want to refresh this and get a blank SMS JSON or SM JSON file. Nothing happened there because I didn't wait for it to load. So notice it's still loading, still loading, still loading. Da -da 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 -da. There it goes. All right, laptop's a little slow. So if yours is as well, these will be slow tools at the start. Here's a reminder. Feed the dog. Oh, I have to feed the dog. All right, 1 second. Here's a reminder. Go to the downloads, look for all files, and pick up this SMS JSON file. Okay. Yeah, it's still not wanting to load this. So this will just take a second. The point of this JSON formatting, though, is to give us one file that we could pass back and forth to say, this is the database, this is what I'm working with, this is what I'm editing. It's separate than the squad file, it's separate than the mod file, it's separate than all of those files, but it can be read by all of those programs. Or RDBM can't read it directly, but I have a tool that'll basically convert it into a thing that will be then read correctly. All right, so while this is loading, let's go over to take a look at the data viewer, which is really the meat and potatoes of this. So you see that there's a few different tabs here, a few different panes here. This is basically a graphical user interface for working with these JSON files. So let me use this one. And you'll see that once we load it in, it actually loads quite quickly. And there's three main views in here. There's a leagues view, a teams view, and a player view. When you go into the league view, I don't have all of the table options available in here. I tried to keep this pretty pithy, but you could do a number of things. So, for instance, you could rename the league. We could call this the English Championship, for instance. And once we do that, it does actually retain the change. What it's doing when it does this is it's editing the file that has been uploaded into the system. So that original file that we uploaded a second ago, not touched. That did not change at all. It's still the way it is. If we were, right now this says EFL Championship, but here under league name it says English Championship. If we were to refresh and then reload the same file we just loaded, you'll see that it goes back to EFL Championship. That original file did not get changed. The process here is going to be basically to affect your changes in the data viewer, then download a new SMJSON file, and that's the new one. That's the one that would have the retained changes in it. So let's call this the English Championship. And you could change some of the other values. When we download, then it will have these changes implemented in them. We'd also move some teams around, so we could move, let's say we move Blackburn Rovers to the Premier League, and Birmingham and Coventry. And then we kick Man City, Man U, and Liverpool out. It's a wild season. Can't believe 3 of the top 6 crashed out of the Premier League. It's wild. All right, so on the left-hand side here, we do have all the leagues retained. There's also, in some cases, we've retained some of the blank records. So you can see here that these are just blank records that are in the table. Down here, nothing happens, but these are some of the blank records. So you could hypothetically add a league here using that. All right, so if we go into the teams view, a few things change. So one is that we have a focus on specific league. So on the left-hand side here, this is every team in the game, or at least in the database that I gave it. But if we were to update this to, let's say, the Premier League, then it will only have the teams that we now have in the Premier League. Notice that the changes were affected. So Coventry, for instance, Birmingham, Blackburn are all actually listed in the Premier League now. Let's see over here. I don't let you change the team ID in this format. I think retaining the team IDs and really knowing what you're doing with them and avoiding duplicates is going to be really important. I might open that feature up in the future, but for now, team IDs can't be affected, can't be changed. So let's say you wanted to spell this out, so Nottingham Forest. That change will now be affected, and turns out Nottingham Forest has really changed their color palette. So we're going to display that by making these changes here. And if we leave and come back, you'll see that those are retained. The ball IDs, I do not limit which ball IDs are available. So some of these are actually not, they won't work in game. So you do need to know which ones work and which ones don't. I can make that change later. All right, and then you could change the rival and such as well. Down here at the bottom, you can change the which players are on the team. So let's say that Ryan Yates ends up getting a transfer from Nottingham Forest to, let's put him on an MLS team. Toronto really needs him. So Ryan Yates moves over to Toronto. And then when we go into the players view, if we go to the MLS, where's the MLS? Oh my goodness. It's in here somewhere. Here's the MLS. By the way, originally on the left-hand side, when you first go to the players view, I'll show you this. This is every single player in the database on the left-hand side when you start it. So this goes on for ages and ages and ages. Obviously, that's not terribly practical, but you can then update this, and now all of the players in the MLS appear. Update it over here, this second one. I think I said I put them on Toronto. There we go. And Ryan, whatever, should be in here. Ryan Yates, there he is. All right. So there's a couple of nice features in here. The birth dates do, as far as I can tell, accurately calculate. The nationalities should also accurately calculate to the correct ID value. These heights, when you change them, it will actually update to the imperial units. The weights as well will also update to imperial units over here on the right-hand side. So if you're more comfortable with one or the other, you can actually see what changes are being made. Let's talk player names for just a second. So in the JSON viewer, which let's see if this, there we go. All right. This won't be ready yet. This takes a minute. So what I just did was copied this, put it into the online JSON viewer. This will take a minute to load, but once it does, I'll show you the JSON viewer. Basically, we store these names as plain text. Rather than the system that FIFA uses, which is to use IDs, as soon as we've turned it into a JSON, an SMJSON file, we turn it into plain text. So here we go. Brief aside from where we were, but here's the structure of a JSON file. So it's essentially made up of 6 tables: players, teams, leagues, team player links, league team links, and nations. If we go to a player, well, if we go into the players section here, and let's say we went into the 9th player in the list, that's Zola Gianfranco. You could hypothetically actually edit these values right in here. And here, I'll tell you what, let's actually do it with the first person because it'll be easier to see. Um, Let's say I just wanted to change the jersey name to just be Cole. Oh, it won't let me edit it there. Let's see if it'll let me edit it here. This one in particular does not let me edit. Well, regardless, there are text editors that will let you actually edit these values as well. Just turns out that this online JSON viewer doesn't happen to be one of them. But you can see, you can basically see the structure of the data here, that each individual record has these tags, and these tags end up having the data in them. And that's all we're really looking at here. You can edit this in plain text if you wanted to. In fact, if we were to, like, let's say search here, the first player that shows up, his first name is Joe, last name Cole, common name is empty, and jersey name ends up being J. Cole, so I could change that to just Cole. And after my memory freaks the fuck out for a little while, then in the viewer that'll be viewable again. So anyway, we're storing names as plain text, so when you change these, it's really just changing these values right in here. There we go. Yeah, I changed it. And if we go back, change the jersey name to Cole, go into the first player. I'll see if I can find a program that does JSON editing a little bit more um, easily, but as you can see, the jersey name gets changed to Cole. So there's a number of different ways that you can interact with this. You could directly affect the data if you can kind of see what's going on, or you can use the data viewer, either way. These are limited to the ranges that are allowed. So the old thing that Creation Master would do is if any of these values got too low, the whole thing would crash. This is protected now. And every time you make a change, it saves it to the database. However, you don't have the database yet. You've not done anything with the database. So these changes are kind of stored within this online session, but nothing's actually happened with it yet. Let's see. I want to hang on to Ryan Yates's player ID is this here. So I'm going to open up a programmer's notepad. Player ID is that for Ryan Yates. And then I want to get his team ID, which should be MLS. Whoops. MLS and Toronto. Team ID is here. So team ID. We're just going to confirm in a second that those changes actually did happen. Okay, so That is essentially what you can do with the team's view, the player view, and the league's view. So you can kind of affect all of those changes. More to come on this front. I think what I can do is essentially integrate everything that that SM23 was doing. I think I can implement all of that right in here. Essentially, there'll be a button that you could click somewhere in here that says simulate, or imputate, and it will kind of take the positions and pick some scores, pick some ratings based on that. So I don't have a clear vision for exactly how that's going to work yet, but I have some ideas. All right, so let's say we actually do want this file. So everything that we've done here, to reiterate, isn't affected in any of the files that we actually have on our computer right now. So we need to download a new file. So we hit save SM23JSON, and now it downloads a new one. A few things about this. So if we go into downloads and we look at these files, you'll see that it records the SM23 JSON maker. It gives you the date and the time that these files were downloaded. So this looks to be the newest one here. And so now we have a new JSON file from roughly 9:42 right now. Okay, so now we have it on our computer. Going over to the last of the tools is the alter. All this means is how do we take the JSON and turn it into tables? So this one accepts as an input just an SM-JSON file. So we'll take the most recent one, and it turns it into all of these tables. So hypothetically, if we were to take the league team links, the team player links table, we should be able to put that into RDBM, open any old squad file just to test this. So slow. Okay, so team player links, import. Hopefully this goes well. These are super finicky. If we go into downloads, okay, here it's got JSON outer team player links table, and it gives you the date and the time. So if we import that, then notice that it imported properly. Let's see if we can search for this player ID. We should be looking for 111,651 in the team ID, and that's what we got. So Jason Yates got moved over. All right, so that's roughly what this can do. I suspect that there are bugs. I suspect that this is not going to work perfectly out of the bag, and there's a lot of development left to happen. So I learned my lesson from working with SquadMaker 23 that we need to kind of take this a lot slower, test these things, figure out what's working, what's not, go slow the hell down essentially, and spot the errors and try to tackle them one at a time. So there's that. I will include the link as well, and then if you guys can start messing with it and tell me what you find, it'd be really helpful. So I'm going to start with just the admin team over at IEM, and then probably expand it out from there. Thanks so much. Sorry for the long, arduous video. See you soon.